know what time it is? It's September, so it's basically Halloween. Look, if Spirit Halloween can open and gas stations can start selling those pumpkin Reese's cups as early as late July, I don't want to hear no lip about me being early, especially since Walmart already has their Christmas decorations for sale. You want to complain about Halloween coming early every year, yet Christmas has been trying to overshadow Hallows Eve for years now. Eat a dick. But if I'm going to be defined as early, then I guess this is a good place to start. Through your colorful, whimsical adventures in your platformers and multiplayer games, there's that one stage that changes everything up. The horror stage, the spooky place, the Halloween level. These levels usually stand out because of how tonally different they are from the rest of the game. The colors change from bright and vibrant blues and yellows to darker tones with purples, orange, and sometimes greens. The music can range from eerie to something you hear in a monster movie. And speaking of monsters, the enemies might even change to something that fits the season. And that's what we're counting down today. But speaking of seasons, for those who don't know, I actually made a similar list back in 2022. So any of the levels that I went over in that list won't be repeated. So I don't want to hear no, why wasn't the Treehouse of Horror level from Simpsons Hit and Run in this video? Well, because it wasn't the first one. It's even in the thumbnail. You big dum-dum. No brain. Not even in a cool way like a zombie. You're just an idiot. But I guess that's rule 1 on the list. Anything that is mentioned in the 2022 video will not be here, and I recommend checking that list out before you start leaving comments complaining that I didn't include so-and-so. Rule 2. The game itself cannot be already spooky themed, because that would be kind of redundant, so no Pumpkin Jack or Castlevania. 3. Only one per series. Some franchises have multiple horror levels, but to add some variety, we're going for one to represent that said series. Rule 4. These levels can only come from games that I own. How can I talk about something if I have no experience in it? So unfortunately, still no Man Monster Mansion from Banjo-Kazooie. Maybe third time's the charm? We're also removing one rule from the original video. In the first list, I said no levels from the Mario or Sonic series, because I wanted to make lists dedicated to them. But that hasn't happened yet, so I'm lifting that rule for now. But if I ever do make a top list for Mario or Sonic spooky levels, just know that the ones on this list will probably be number 1. And one last thing before anyone starts acting all kooky. We are judging the levels based on how they handle the horror or Halloween theme. By putting one game on top of the other, that does not mean that I think that game is better, it just means that I think their horror level was more spooky. Also, a lot of this stuff is subjective, and do you really want to be known as that guy who screenshotted a YouTube video to post it on Twitter to complain about someone else's opinion? It's gonna be okay. You'll live. Drink some crushed soda. It's orange like a pumpkin. Now let's begin. Welcome to Cackling Pumpkins, and these are 10 more Halloween levels and games. Saved it. Kung Fu Chaos is a 3D party fighting game starring actors to represent different fighting styles. Each stage is a set for director Xiao Ting's biggest film.
You did good, but I can do gooder. Watch this. Whoa!
Many of the level's titles are parodies of famous Hollywood movies, almost like Xiao Ting is making bootlegs of them. This includes Night of the Living Fog, and I'm a sucker for anything inspired by classic horror movies, especially if they use the title Night of the Living or Attack of the... I don't know, it's just something that never gets old to me. Just fill the blank with anything stupid and I'll be happy. Attack of the Chunky Milk. These level scrolls, you must get the most kills or eliminate your opponents. This stage starts with spike traps that players can activate, but the color of the button only activates that said spike trap. Honestly, it's kinda satisfying to kill unsuspecting stupid AI with the spike traps. I don't know, I just like how it looks. Then you are attacked by vampires that kill anyone who gets near them.
Invincible hopping vampires! Impossible for killing! Run! Run away! Run away!
I never got killed by any of these guys. It was usually the spike traps that would get me more. Speaking of which, the stage ends with a seemingly bottomless pit with more spike traps. Guide your character around the spikes and be the last one standing. Oh, would you look at that? More spikes! After this level, there is a minigame the winner gets to play. Their performance determines how many lives they have for the final game. This is just Pac-Man, but with vampires instead of ghosts. And, oh, wait a minute! No more spikes? The final game has you sacrifice your fellow man to the gods, pick up your virgin and toss them into the fiery pits to satisfy whatever deity you pray to. unless you're an atheist. But don't you act so innocent. I know what you do to circumcise foreskins. Want some ketchup with that, you freak?
That'll keep those shadow monsters away, champ.
What the fuck would you say that, Stu? Good night, Tommy, my precious ball of joy. Be sure to keep your eye out for the Slender Man. I'm keeping the blinds open, by the way. Oh, and I'm gonna blow a fuse. Oopsie doodles. In the game, Rugrats Search for Reptar, every level is inspired by an episode of the show. That includes Let There Be Light. In the show, Tommy and Chucky are having a sleepover, and Chucky's the one worried about monsters under the bed. Stu blows the power in the neighborhood with his anti-gravity playpen, so Phil and Lil are also brought in until the power is brought back on, which Tommy believes can be brought back by opening the fridge. But in the game, it's just Tommy being put to bed by his parents. Chucky, Phil, and Lil are not in this level, as Stu is the one who warns Tommy about the monsters because sure, that's what Dr. Lipschitz would recommend. And Tommy has to venture to the fridge by himself. The level is just a normal house but with the lights out. That doesn't seem too interesting as everything is just tinted a dark blue, but there are some objects that aren't recolored, which I think adds more of a unique color scheme that fits the season, like these orange drawers. Another difference is that there are monsters running around the house, these 2D cartoon ghosts that are working on their Toe Jam and Earl impressions. Use the flashlight on them and they'll break apart and disappear, but you'll only have so much energy in your flashlight. You should have no problem seeing where to go because everything is colored, and you should only have to use it to fight the ghost. But for some reason, if you do run out of energy, there are other batteries lying around the level. When Tommy gets to the fridge, he finds that he can't open it on his own, so he goes to find Spike and drop his only form of defense for some reason. Even though you could just pick it right back up, which apparently some people didn't know you could do. I guess they just assumed that because Tommy is no longer holding it after the cutscene means that they can't use it. Don't worry, as a kid I thought the same thing. When you get the Spike, he opens the fridge at the exact moment Stu fixes the fuse, and thus the lights return.
I fixed the fuse, Deed.
You light up my life, honey.
Now put that anti-gravity playpen inside me. That's a toy alright, but not the one you'd find at Toy Palace. It's the one they sell at Spencer's.
Shrek the game is a strange anomaly. It's obvious that it was being developed during the time the film was also being made. The story, the locations, the characters, minus a few minor appearances of the dragon and Gingy, this game has almost nothing to do with the movie. Some even believe that the game was meant to be based on the Chris Farley version of the film, and thus had to be changed when the movie did. I mean, really, how many times have you seen giant realistic spiders and regular skeletons in Shrek? Which is on brooms, sure, but I feel like that's a coincidence. Welcome to Creepy Crypt. You start in a graveyard filled with witches, and as you make your way through the graves, you'll find giant spiders and skeletons running around. Keep going and you'll find an entrance to the crypt, which has got to be one of the most frustrating places in the game. You see, Shrek is a lot more nimble than usual here, as he's able to run like a professional athlete doing an average amount of drugs. And he's able to wall jump off of just about anything. Sounds good, but this is clearly no Mario 64. So, what do you do in this game? Well, speaking of Mario 64, there are multiple open levels to traverse with different objectives in each to complete. The first has you knocking out witches with your farts. I don't know if this counts as chemical warfare, but this has to break the Geneva Convention in some way. It doesn't help that you celebrate their suffering with Shrek's iconic victory screech. The second has you try to clear the bats from the crypt. This level was annoying as you can already barely see, but it doesn't help that the bats seem to be always out of your sight. Next, you knock the lights out of a bunch of skeletons and carry them over to the music chamber where they will dance with surfer voices. The last unique level is simple. Just carry the baby giant spiders to their mother. The last two levels are shared throughout almost every stage. Find the evil fairies and the hidden Easter eggs. The game isn't good, and it has nothing to do with the source material, but I just love me some stock skeletons. Dance, my friends! Dance to forget your untimely demise. LittleBigPlanet, a series of games where the entire point is to let people express themselves and create their own levels, stories, and costumes. Well, it was, anyway. But it's not a over-the-shoulder, realistic narrative game, so why would modern Sony care about it?
But there's Sackboy: A Big Adventure, that and Ratchet and Clank and Astro. Those 3 whole games since the PS5's launch proves you wrong.
I guarantee you that Sony only let those exist so they can market to kids. Keep in mind that I'm not saying that these games are made for kids, I'm saying that that's what Sony sees them as. Also, you can't create levels in Sackboy: A Big Adventure, so what's the point? No, you can't officially play any of the custom levels people have made over the years, but there are pre-made levels that exist within the campaign. In the first game, we have an entire world based on not Halloween, but the Spanish holiday known as the Day of the Dead. While the Day of the Dead and Halloween are not the same holiday by all means, they do share a lot of similarities. Both are only a day apart, they can be pretty spooky, they involve sharing treats with others, and have people venturing outside to partake in festivities. While on Halloween, it's to dress up and get candy, on the Day of the Dead, it's to respect and honor those who are no longer with us. The Wedding is a collection of levels that take inspiration from this holiday. You are surrounded by candy skulls, flowers, and skeleton wedding goers. The first level of this world, the Reception, is full of energy needed to celebrate 2 people coming together. You can hear the Spanish band Cafe de Cuba in the background. I hope I pronounced that right, as I already sound enough like a stupid white American as it is. The second level, the Darkness, takes you through the catacombs to find the bride's groom. Her dog is here to guide you as your source of light. Here the music becomes a lot more haunting. There are still skulls and flowers, but also bats and spike traps as well. And the final level, the bride thinks that she's been stood up, so she releases the Skulldozer to wreak havoc. In this auto-scrolling level, you have to keep moving and avoid the red smoke that'll kill you as soon as you touch it. This taxidermy monstrosity will continue chasing you until you make it to the groom waiting on the other side. A story of love, horrors, and the early start of an unhealthy relationship, but that's not my problem. That's for the marriage counselors and the lawyers to handle the eventual divorce to deal with. I've got more important matters, such as talking to this microphone about more Halloween levels. I'm sure you'll understand. You would think a series like Pac-Man, with its entire premise being all about going through a dark maze while being hunted by ghosts, would have more spooky locations, but there really isn't as many as you'd think. Well, there is the final world from Pac-Man World 2. Firstly, we start off with the Haunted Boardwalk. Pac-Man rollerblades on a wickedy wooden pathway that's collapsing in on itself. Throughout your ride, you must avoid demon ghosts throwing fireballs, and bats that'll try to hit you during these precise jumps. Next is night crawling. Now you're in a cave, facing off against skeleton pirates, and oddly realistic spiders that I'm surprised don't explode into green blood when killed. Night is right, because the cave is very dark. It can be frustrating trying to figure out what you can or can't walk on. There's one jump near the end of the level that I got stuck on, not because it was hard, but because I didn't know what I was supposed to do, and really? All the way over there? And I was supposed to know that in this dark-ass level, how? Next is the Ghost Bay. The wooden platforms come back, but now they're surrounded with pointed metal fences. You have to face off against a brother of the Golden Fruit Tree, go through his maze, complete his challenges, and survive. And yeah, unlike most Pac-Man mazes, this one is really confusing to go through. You're going to have to learn the ins and outs of this maze to escape, and that's not including 100%ing the level. And then there's the final boss, Spook. You return to Pac-Man's home to put back the Golden Fruit to imprison him once more.
Oh my blob spoilers! Did you know that this game has a final boss? Oh.
Thanks, Clumbo the Spoiled Blob, but I already took care of it.
Oh. But do you know who Miss Pac-Man really is?
I've gotta be honest, I grew up with the PlayStation 2, but I completely missed out on many of the staple titles of the console. I didn't play games like God of War, Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, or Ratchet and Clank until only just the past few years. I mainly grew up with licensed games based on shows and movies I liked, with a few original exceptions like Sonic Heroes, Kingdom Hearts 2, and Metal Arms Glitch in the System. But who needs games like Kinetica or Silent Hill 2 when you've got Kids Next Door Operation Video Game, am I right? Hell yeah! Kill Grandma, stuff him for the lasting damage she did to my developing brain! Fuck! So yeah, sorry if I miss any big Ratchet and Clank spooky worlds, as so far I have only played through the first 2 games and Deadlocked. Ratchet Deadlocked is more of a combat-oriented title that's less about exploration and more about completing objectives, survival, and fighting enemies. For this reason, some didn't like the game, but I loved it. Near the end of the game, you enter the Ghost Station, an abandoned space shuttle surrounded by asteroids in the black void of space. This area has the most grinding throughout any level, as there's barely any ground to walk on. Throughout the stage, you fight ghosts of other enemies, the same type of enemies you face throughout the game. It's almost like their spirits are coming back with a vengeance, but everyone knows the best way to deal with a ghost is by blasting it in the face to remind it of the last moments of their living lives. What happens to a ghost then? I don't know. I choose not to think about those kind of topics too much because they keep me up at night. It's 8 AM, and I've been up since 6 PM yesterday. The level's visuals nail the creepy atmosphere, but it isn't able to keep it due to the action-based music. It kinda takes you out of what could have been a more dreadful experience, especially since the two-faced sportscasters, Dallas and Juanita, put so much weight on how horrible the level is.
Gleeman Box has sent Team Darkstar to the Ghost Station. The course is unbeatable, unbearable, unthinkable, and I'm having an aneurysm just talking about it!
And it could have felt like that if it wasn't for the music. The song's not bad, but it really doesn't fit what the level is trying to convey. I'm not a music guy, so the best way I can put it is make it sound spookier and deadlier, and put more of those weird tunes you hear in old alien movies. But despite that, the level is still great. The music only takes it down a notch. It at least made it to the second half. I usually talk about 2000s games, maybe some late 90s or early 2010s, but I also want to talk about the indie scene more. Of course, everyone knows about Shovel Knight. Many often consider him to be the face of indies after taking it from Meat Boy, you bastard. Shovel Knight has to be one of my favorite 2D platformers, and it comes with not one, but two spooky levels, Plague Knight Stage and Specter Knight Stage. Ironically enough, the locations of two of the three characters that would eventually get their own campaigns later on, the third being King Knight. Let's start with Plague Knight Stage. This stage is all about chemicals and reactions. For example, if you step on these yellow pot-looking platforms, fire will almost immediately spew out, so you have to stay quick on your feet. As much as it sounds like a 2010s low random meme, look out for the radioactive exploding rats. They'll try to jump at you and explode after getting hit. The background is a shelving system of books and vials, but as you progress, you'll find these giant vials that change color. Fun fact, if you're using an LED keyboard while playing this stage, it will change color to correspond to the vials on screen. That's actually really cool. I don't know any other game that does that. Your mid-boss is a madman throwing vials at you. Some you can hit back. After a while, he'll transform into a Yeti-like monster and charge around the screen. Then there's Plague Knight himself. He'll destroy the ground you're standing on to make it harder to avoid his attacks. He can seem a bit tricky, but his research are no mere tricks. Then there's Specter Knight Stage. You've got gravestones, creepy buildings with skulls in the walls, and eerie lakes. In the lakes you have these platforms that change height depending on if there's anything on them. There's also an entire section that's almost completely blacked out, and you have to use the flashes of lightning to see where you can jump. Of course, you have your typical skeletons with swords, which is to be expected in most video games, but still welcome in my book. These ghosts with their tiny witch hats are adorable though. Specter Knight himself can be tricky as well, but my advice is to try and stay on the platforms above, wait for him to throw his scythe, and strike him from above. He's easier to manage than Plague Knight, but still a challenge. Before we move on, the devs of Shovel Knight are making a new game called Mina the Hollower, a top-down style game that still has that retro-inspired look Shovel Knight mastered. You should check the game out whenever it releases. Who knows, a release date might get announced between the time I record this audio and when the video releases. Then I'll look like an asshole. In the first list, I included Frogger 2 Swampy's Revenge, but have you heard of a game called Zapper, One Wicked Cricket? It's a game that has the same kind of tile-by-tile gameplay as Frogger 2. In fact, Zapper is actually a spiritual successor to that game, as both were developed by the same studio, Blitz Games. They also share the same director, Darren Wood, and one of the composers, Andrew Morris. Minus maybe feeling a bit sluggish by comparison, the game is like an unofficial sequel to Frogger 2. And just like Frogger 2, we have excellent Halloween levels. But they're not just Halloween levels, they're Western Halloween levels.
I tell you what, down here in Shell, we celebrate All Hallows Eve like the sweet son of a bitch she is. We got cowboy sheepdogs, fire-breathing jack-o'-lanterns, and the most terrifying thing a redneck can face, a jumping, gun-slinging cactus. Sweet baby Jesus!
There are many parallels to Frogger 2's levels, such as the pickaxe-wielding guys are very similar to the bloody axe-chopping frogs. While it's not exclusive to these levels, as it is the objective of the game, you can murder children before they're even born. Pro-lifers hate this game, but they also hate women and kids who already left the womb, so who cares what they think? Next is probably my favorite level of the bunch, Voodoo Choo Choo. You're on the back of a moving train heading God knows where, as you must make your way to the top. But now you have steam blowing at you with miscellaneous monster hands.
Well, buckaroo, why not go ahead and grab yourself a hot one from the grill? Don't mind the bug, you'll get some extra protein out of that. I tell you what.
Well, that seems like that's all there is for this level, and dear God, that's fucking awesome! No, it's not required to head to the face of the train, which makes seeing this eye staring at you even better. And next there's Rockface Chase, and yeah, it seems like they sacrificed a Halloween theme for this one and made it solely a Western stage. It's not bad, but kinda disappointing considering the last two levels we went through. They probably should have put this one in the middle. By the way, the music for all these stages are incredible. I often use the music of Spookville for many of my videos because they're just that good. And just like Frogger 2, I would have had this at number 1 on the list, but remember, I did live one rule from that video. Gee, I wonder what stage from the Sonic the Hedgehog series would make it into a list about Halloween levels. It's a goddamn mystery. Well, sorry to say, and this might disappoint some people, but I chose Crisis City. Nah, just kidding. It's
Cryptic Castle
from Shadow the Hedgehog. Okay. It's Pumpkin Hill. What the fuck else were you expecting? It is the spooky level from the Sonic franchise. Coming from Sonic Adventure 2, Knuckles must gather the pieces of the Master Emerald that he shattered to ensure that neither Eggman or Rouge get their hands on it. 3 of the pieces ended up in this lovely place. Even though most Knuckles stages in Sonic Adventure 2 are generally disliked due to the annoying placement of many of the Emerald pieces, many love this stage. Not only for the look, but also because it's not as bad as the other levels. It feels more like a Sonic Adventure 1 Knuckles stage. It's got everything you can ask for when it comes to a Halloween stage in a video game. Cool iconic landmarks, a background that could work as a desktop wallpaper, and hey, just like Zapper, we got a spooky train. Some of these landmarks feel like they could work as Halloween decor you could sit on your desk. You know those Christmas decorations that are set up like small town pieces that can light up and you can rearrange however you'd like? That's what I'm talking about. Seriously, SEGA should really team up with Spirit Halloween or Home Depot or some soulless corporation to get these made. I would buy them in a heartbeat. And of course, who can forget the Pumpkin Hill rap?
I can't see a thing, but it's around somewhere. I gotta hold my head. I have no fear. It probably seems crazy.
Knuckles was often associated with rap music during the Dreamcast era, and honestly, it was fucking cool. Even if you're one of those people who are stuck in 2017 and still unironically say, Sonic was never good, you can admit that the series almost always nails its soundtrack. Okay, I said almost. It's like a 95 to a 98% good track record. But what could have beaten Pumpkin Hill of all levels, you may ask? Well, you're about to see. It may seem sacrilege to not put Pumpkin Hill at number 1, but I'm sure many of you will understand as soon as you see the location that I put on top of the list. Super Mario Land 2: The 6 Golden Coins was one of my first and favorite Game Boy games. I still have the same copy, which is a little chewed up from a dog we used to have, but it still works just fine. Minus not being able to save, but whatever. Unlike most 2D Mario games, you get to choose which world you want to complete in whatever order you'd like. And it isn't the typical fire, ice, or sand levels you keep seeing so much of. There are unique themes that you don't really see very often in the series. Being inside of a giant tree, space before Mario Galaxy, and even a giant robotic replica of Mario for all you freaks to want to get inside his pants and sniff his feet and... wow. The Mario series really has corrupted minds of generations, huh? Like, it's not even funny when you look at it all. Oh dear. Good lord. Gee whiz. Gadzooks. Great googly moogly! But my favorite world, or zone as they're called in this game, is Pumpkin Zone. This isn't just another Boo house. I mean, sure, Boos are here, but name any Halloween trope and you'll see it here. Graveyards, ghosts, yokai, cauldrons, bugs, and vampires galore. You even have Goombas wearing hockey masks with knives stuck to their heads, which is gnarly as fuck. And these depressed lanterns. What are they sad about? I don't know. They might be dehydrated, but who cares? Just look at the world map. What isn't there to love? No, seriously, tell me. I challenge you right now. The only bad thing is that we haven't seen a modernized version of it. But it's not just the visuals. There's blocks that turn invisible, and thank God they're not like the disappearing blocks in Mega Man. They just look like they do. These flashing spike balls that act similar to thwomps, and the boss of this zone is a witch, so the game even lets you be in the minds of a paranoid villager who just saw a woman solve a math problem. Or using a broomstick to ingest drugs. No, seriously, look it up. Where do you think the tropes of witches riding broomsticks comes from? Well, that's one of the theories, at least. The other suggested the handle end of the broom represents the devils, and that was the top 10 more Halloween levels. I hope you all have a fantastic Halloween season. Penis. It represents the devil's penis. Penis.
You know me, the fighting freak Knuckles, and we're at Pumpkin Hill. You ready? I ain't gonna let it get to me. I'm just gonna